Right. Good morning, everybody. From a cold, wet, wintry southern New South Wales. Not as cold as it's often been, but it's very wet and wintry, and apparently some snow out west or on the tablelands. But very lovely weather, very conducive for meditation, as you can imagine, and perhaps get a sense behind me of the wintry looking day that's soon to clear, apparently. So whatever the weather is doing in your part of the world, at one level it doesn't really matter. We just watch the changing weather patterns, knowing that they are changing. Indeed, they are changing, always changing. And seeing the value in both the sunny days and the cold, wet, wintry days. I think some studies have shown in Australia that people who live in Melbourne tend to spend more time, obviously, because of the weather, inside, introverting, reading, contemplating perhaps, whereas people who live in Queensland tend to represent us most in the Olympics because they're always outdoors. So we have a lot of Olympians, runners, swimmers, whateverers, coming from Queensland, the sunny state. So it's interesting for yourself to contemplate what country you live in and how that might give rise to certain proclivities, whether you like them or not. But where I live, we get a balance. We get some warm days and some sunny summers, and then perhaps an extended winter. It's good for meditators anyway. Okay, so I can see everyone here from all over the globe, all different time zones and so on. So it's really wonderful to connect with everyone. And I'm assuming, I made the assumption that everyone can actually hear and see me okay. The one thing I have to monitor this session is the connectivity here, because it has been so cloudy. So touch wood that I'm just looking up because there's some blue sky coming. So the connection should be okay. We're reliant on tethering through our mobile phone, and it's not always particularly reliable. Okay, so thanks, Audrey, for letting me know that all is well in connectivity land. And welcome to all those who haven't been to a live session before. Pretty simple. Excuse me, I've just had some breakfast, an early breakfast, after a short fast. So my stomach says, oh, it's quite a lot after a fast. But anyway, bear with. So for the sessions, we simply do a short guided meditation, and then we open it up to questions. That's pretty much it. So whatever arises, arises. So now that the notification has gone out and people should have joined, just going to ask you to close your chat room, ignore the chat thread. I'll leave it on, but just ignore it if people come in late. And get yourself into a comfortable seated position if you can, if your body is allowing that. If you can sit cross-legged on the floor, that will be good. If you need to sit on a chair, wherever you are. The primary thing to focus on is to keep your back upright and supported, your spine supported, your chin slightly tucked down, and whether your eyes open or eyes closed, just ensure that you're really just drawing the attention inwards. So just take a minute or so to get comfortable and relaxed. And to begin this meditation, draw the focus more to becoming aware of your emotional state. And using various skillful means to begin by cultivating, if you like, encouraging or developing an attitude of opening your heart. Opening your heart to whatever's going on in your own mind and body and life, and opening your heart to the suffering in the world. And one way to perhaps facilitate this, it can be helpful, is by putting your hand on your heart, hand or hands, whatever feels comfortable. It's kind of in the heart, literal heart area, but we also talk about the seat of awareness as being, even though it's not locatable, but at the beginning stages, it can feel that it's locatable in the chest, in the heart area. And that's why iconography or images of Jesus, for example, we have the image of the Sacred Heart. So it's not his physical organ, but it's located there. So if it helps you to come into your heart, which is really just the wide, expansive awareness, then place your hand on your heart and notice what effect that has. And in doing so, you just make the conscious intention to actually feel an open-heartedness. You can use simple mental affirmations like, may I be well, may I be open-hearted, may I be in the world with an open, clear heart. And what we're trying to do here is to bring the concentration of energy, which is often in the head. We think when we meditate, we're up here concentrating. And many Westerners do that. Many men do that. It's a very cerebral activity. But that's not where the heart is located. It's where the logic and rational mind is. So we're coming out of the head down, literally, physically, into the heart. And as you do that, you notice how you slowly start to become more embodied, more whole and grounded. So explore this within your own mind and body. to see what it feels like to come back into the heart. But don't think about it or critique it. And don't analyze it. If you do that, you're simply going back into your head, thinking. So this is a non-conceptual, fully embodied, open awareness, open heart. Let any concentration in the head just flow downwards. Let the weight and gravity of your own body bring you into the present moment in a full embodied way. May I allow my heart to be open. May I keep my heart open to all beings, to all the suffering, to all the joy, to all the confusion, to all the clarity. May I open and accept everything. From this felt sense of open-heartedness. Now I'm just going to ring the bell a few times as part of this practice for helping you come more and more into the present moment. Encourage you just to close your eyes now, if they're open, to fully listen to the sound and resonance of the bell. And let that resonance also enter fully into your heart, your mind and body, vibrating with the resonance of the bell. And again, just simply notice the effects it has, how it can pull you out of your thinking mind, simply into being. So this listening to the bell, the sound of the bell, is really a call for you to come back to your senses. Or to come to your senses. And when you listen, you should have noticed that there's just an open awareness there. Unless, of course, you were thinking about what type of bell it is, what tone or note it's in, whether I was hitting it soft or loudly. But through all of that, there was just a listening. Just a bare state of awareness. And as I continue to talk during the meditation as offering some guidance, you can listen in the same way. And start to notice that which is listening, which is aware of the sounds, the sound of my voice coming and going, or the sounds of the birds that might be picked up in the microphone. Don't focus on the words though. And don't focus on what type of bird it might be. Simply listen. And most importantly, pay attention to the silence between my words, the spaces, the gaps. How do you experience these silent spaces between the words or the sounds? What do you notice about the quality of that open, silent awareness? And the big question is, can you even recognize it, know it, and be it? Or is your mind running consistently at 1,000,000 miles an hour, such that you can't notice the gap? So, a very effective and quick way of going into quietude in meditation is to begin by noticing the space between thoughts, between sounds, that space and silence is ever present. But our world and our minds are constantly filling it up and occluding it. So allow the clouds, the dark clouds, to clear by starting to notice even a glimmer or a glimpse of the blue sky. And this will increase the more consistently you start to notice it and pay attention to the gaps rather than the clouds. There's really not much more you have to do in meditation. If you do just this much, it all just happens naturally. The work is done for you. So simply notice the space, the silence, and teach yourself and train yourself to rest there. And then simply let go and trust. That's all we need to do. And as I ring the bell again a few times to bring us out of this meditation, as you're listening to the sound of each gong, just fully come into that attention and awareness. Start to notice the energy of fully listening, the energy of being totally absorbed in the sound. Such that there is only the sound and the resonance. There's no you anymore listening, judging, opining. There's just bare awareness. So really start to notice the quality of that energy. So when you feel ready, please come out from the meditation slowly and gently. And there's an opportunity now for some Q&A. And there was a question earlier, I think. I noticed a question come in early, which is lucky because normally they would just disappear into the long thread, but it's from Anne-Marie. And her question is, Please speak on a Buddhist term, suchness. Is it in any way related to sunyata? Okay, so suchness is often translated in the Pali, and I think the Sanskrit, but I'm not sure, as tatata. Great word, tatata. It means suchness. And it's, again, one of those very profound words that no matter how you attempt to define it or pin it down, is never going to be the suchness. So we can have conceptual understandings of some of these words, but until we experience what suchness means, it's just going to remain as a conceptual understanding. But the word suchness, as it's used to talk of one who has gone to suchness, you could say, is that it's very similar to sunyata, because suchness, the nature of suchness is emptiness. So sunyata is a word, a Sanskrit word that means emptiness. So there's no real difference between the two words. They're just words pointing to the same nature of ultimate reality. And then I can start talking about the nature of ultimate reality, but all that's going to be some fancy words that may not mean anything to you in your direct experience. And then when you read about these very profound concepts, the mind starts imagining them. And then when we start imagining them, we can start imagining that we understand them and are experiencing them. But it's really just becomes a conceptual understanding. So it's important not to, particularly with the words that are pointing towards ultimate truth and the most profound levels of reality, perhaps not to pay too much attention to those words. It's much better, and I'm not saying, I'm not discouraging you, Anne-Marie, from contemplating them, but just to warn people away from getting really lost in these very high-sounding, profound words. Because I think that's what we do. I was contemplating. I think we want to go to the pinnacle, to the top of the mountain before we've even figured out the route, the path. So suchness and sunyata, emptiness, are the most profound levels of a realization. And you can Google them, and AI is probably going to come up with a really nice little succinct overview of these two words, which you're all welcome to explore and research. But it's often just a distraction from looking at what's happening here and now. But even still, suchness can be the ultimate suchness of tatata, but suchness is here and now with whatever we're experiencing. So if we're experiencing boredom and agitation, confusion, anger, that is suchness. It's to look at the suchness of that, the way it is. And then when we really look, if we have a mind that clearly sees, we see that all such things, the ultimate reality and the so-called appearances, are all sunyata. They're all empty. So in a sense, one can experience or move through into suchness through the sort of like mundane experiences that you're facing. Yeah, because we often have this, that there's this and the conditioned world, and then there's the great pinnacle of suchness and realization over here. But the only way to the pinnacle is to move through the the steps in the mountains and perhaps come back time and time again to the foundations. And by the foundations, I mean things like contemplating the Four Noble Truths. Yeah. The four foundations of mindfulness. They're our foundational teachings. But particularly the Four Noble Truths at a time like this, where there's a lot of confusion. And if we really understand the Four Noble Truths and contemplate it, it takes us to suchness, the way things are. And then looking clearly and directly, we see the not-self nature of everything, the sunyata, the emptiness. And this is the way it is, the suchness. And then when we let go of all that confusion, the suchness takes on a deeper meaning, a deeper quality. But even simply in that meditation, when I asked you just to listen or come into your heart and just to notice that reality and experience within you that just knows, that is just aware and free, even for a millisecond, free from thinking, free from the sense of me and mine, free from judging. In that millisecond, when the mind is open and spacious, aware and free of self, that is suchness. The thing about suchness, it's always there, right? And the nature of suchness is sunyata, empty. But it's not nothing. It's not a blank nothingness, is it? But what it is, if I got you to try and explain to people what that is, that millisecond of suchness, then the words just come and start making it something it's not. So the true nature of suchness is silence, non-conceptual, but fully aware and present. So we'll just leave it at that. And I'll try and find another question. If you can also just write questions in the chat, that would help me navigate, because even though your messages of appreciation are lovely and appreciated, the questions tend to get buried. So I'm just slowly scrolling down. I'm going to let you know where I'm going. I'm going from Germany through St. Louis, Colorado, Michigan, Las Vegas, Belgium, Italy, South Africa, Tuscany. I'm having a whirlwind tour. Argentina, St. Louis, San Diego, Austria, Canada. I'm going everywhere. Still haven't found a question. So, Spain, España, Venezuela, France. Ah, nearly at a question. I think I found a question. No. When I wake up, I thank you. That's a thank you. Okay, it's just the chat's full of thank yous and appreciation. How lovely. Maybe that's all there is, and that's all there is to say. Jennifer's got a reflection on suchness. Is not every concept ultimately empty, and thus every word a synonym for ta-ta-ta? Pretty much, yeah. But then that's a concept in itself, an idea, another idea. So this suchness has to be realized, as does everything in our practice. Okay, I found a question from Kumi. I've been connecting with the fact that awareness does not need a me, and the fear that can arise seems to pull me back. Okay, any tips? Great. Well, that's a great insight. Yes, awareness it certainly doesn't need a me. What is a me? What is this me that you have realized is separate from awareness? In the simplest term, the me is just a thought, just an idea. It's an old idea and it keeps bouncing back, and then we attach to that. But when you really rest in awareness and the thoughts either, decrease or dissolve or just merge into the back, into the periphery, we come to the realization that this awareness is free of any concept of me and mine or self. And then, of course, when we're practicing and getting used to this, a fear will often arise. And it's good to know that that's just, a sense of the ego wanting to stay in charge, wanting to stay alive. And we're not used to being empty of a self concept. So we have to go gently and slowly. If you just dive in the deep end and have a full-blown ego death, it can be very terrifying. The ego, I want to live, where am I going? So gently would be my first tip. Don't push yourself, but also, rejoice in the fact that this delusion is having a slow death. The more you practice, the more, this sense of self will start to dissolve. And that's the point, because having a separate sense of self is a great misery. It's a deep suffering when we believe that there's a me here separate from nature, separate from others. It's a terrifying place to be. And the nature of having a separate self is fear. It's rooted in fear. And then from that fear, we act out of anger, greed, and confusion, and everything else. So if you're meditating or doing something and you find that you just naturally are falling into this spacious, open awareness and fear arises, just know, oh, this is good. This is good. This is how you're actually going to start clearing it out. Just know that this is the old sense of me or ego coming back, its head's rising again to say, look at me, don't forget me. So then you can just know it. Just know, I know what this is. But be gentle and kind. Don't think, you're going to die. I'm going to kill you, ego, or something like that. I mean, who's saying that anyway? But just know this is the nature of the ego, a sense of self. And as you look even more clearly into it, you can start to recognize that fear in and of itself is empty. It's nothing there. It's just a thought. The thought might give rise to an unpleasant feeling. If you're not aware at the feeling level, it might overtake you with emotional terror. But even that terror in and of itself is empty. Sunyata. So we've got to start recognizing the emptiness of all these so-called negative emotions that we want to push away. It's gone. Okay, Fana. There's a question from Involvement. Thank you for your ever-present grace and voice. Might you share about your experience with habit energy and resting beneath it? I think I just kind of spoke to that. The habit energy of fear, for example. And then I'm not sure about resting beneath it, but resting beneath it is the natural space of awareness itself. And so when you turn your attention more, as I said in that meditation, just to the gap between even the habit energies, whether it's fear or anger or greed or some sort of addiction, you start noticing the spaces between that, then you are effectively resting between those habitual tendencies. But the trick is not to start getting into battle with any of these reactions that are coming, because they're coming and they're going, for one thing, so they're not permanent. But not only are they coming and going, if we start to see clearly and develop concentration samadhi in our practice, we start to see that these habit energies, they're not made of anything. There's no substance. They're just fleeting, mostly mental impressions, felt bodily sensations. But in and of themselves, there's nothing you can pin down. So it's just like a tsunami, isn't it? These things are just it's coming and going. If you can recognize that and find that which knows the tsunami, then you won't drown in it. So the question below it is, when practicing mindfulness of breathing, there's a sense that I am doing it. That sometimes leads to headaches. How to deal with that? Excuse me, I think I'm going to have a sneezing attack. Hang on. Of course, I don't have a tissue, do I? Okay. Passed. See, even that sneezing desire passed. So, mindfulness of breathing. So when we start practicing, whether it's mindfulness of breathing or mantra or whatever other meditation we pick up, we do pick it up in a dualistic way, because we have this sense of a me and a mind, a subject and an object. So we notice that. Okay, there's a sense that I am breathing, but are you really breathing? If you decide to stop breathing, or if you take away that sense that I'm breathing, what happens? You don't stop breathing. The body breathes for you. So we come to see that there's actually breathing is always happening, but we're not paying attention to it. And when we're asked to bring mindfulness to it, sometimes we can think that I'm breathing, but the body's always breathing. The nature of a body that's alive is to breathe. If it doesn't breathe, it's a dead body. So we need to kind of really see that in our meditation. But when you notice that there's this doer, meditator, that of course leads to tension and headaches in your case. So these are all the things to notice. Rather than start to think and create more headaches for yourself, I've got to stop seeing self and object. I've got to stop believing that I'm the meditator. I've got to get rid of this headache. It's just going to lead to more headaches. So whatever arises, if there's a headache, go into the feeling of the headache and investigate it. What is this? Where is it located? Who's got the headache? Do you own the headache? What is the nature of the headache? It'll bring you very much back just into the feeling, sensate feeling itself, without the storyline. And when you notice this sense, this constant sense that I'm breathing, I'm doing the meditation, just start to notice how tense that makes you feel. Again, you just go into the tension itself, feel that. The just seeing, the just noticing will start to unravel the tension. But if you start thinking that you've got to start now unraveling the tension that you've already created, either consciously or unconsciously, you're going to be on a vicious cycle of tension. So what I'm saying is just notice things and let go. Even if it's not pleasant, that is something to work with. So you sit, and this habitual, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to try and concentrate. And just notice, gosh, that feels so tense. And so tense that I don't even want to meditate. Because when I sit to meditate, I get my jaw clenches and I've got to focus. I get really heady. It means if you've got a headache, you are very heady in your mind. So I don't know if you were there at the beginning, but I asked people to bring their hands to their heart, which again brings you down from the energy in the head. So I'd encourage you to do that, actually. That would be a good thing for you to do. Bring your concentration down from your head into your heart. But don't call it concentration, just awareness, okay? Can you explain how to not dwell on the words but stay in the silence? Well, that whole meditation was effectively about that. What I thought I kept repeating, maybe I didn't say it enough, but is to notice the gaps between the words or the thoughts. But you can notice the gaps between anything. So if you find that you're a very heady thinking person, get it, always going on, and you find it, you can't even notice a gap. It's such a stream of mental activity. Then that's why I was offering you the sound of a bell. Pay attention to the sound, be fully present with it. And then notice the silence between the sounds. Or if you're with your breath, notice the space between the out breath and the next in breath. If you're listening to a recording or a meditation or a teaching, a dharma, there's words, but the words are trying to point you back to the silence that's always there. So this is key to listening to dharma properly. Whether it's the dharma of the silence that's always there, or the dharma of the words that are pointing you back to that. And all you can do initially for a lot of people is just notice how mental you are, how conceptual you are, always focusing on the word and the meaning, whether it's the right word, the right translation, or whether you've got another idea of what that word means. And it's just word, head, intellect. There's a place for intellect, but intellect has to become subservient to wisdom. So when we stay in the silence, we're actually tapping more into wisdom, or the knowing that surpasses any sort of intellectual knowing. But you got to keep practicing. And maybe at the beginning you just notice that you're drowning in words. And the more you notice that and how much stress it causes, it will eventually snap you out of it. But the question below it, how can I embody a reality that is in harmony with myself? These are the same questions, just written with different words. So you're all asking the same thing. A reality that's in harmony with my capital S, which we could say one's true nature, is embodying that which is beyond all ideas of it, for one. And the fact that you've used the word embody is interesting. It's a clue to you and to everyone, is to come back into your body. to be fully present in the bodily experience draws you away from this conceptual proliferation into just a very naked sense of being alive. And it doesn't mean you are the body. The fact is you need to embody yourself in order to transcend the body, or the identification as the body. But you can't uproot this belief in a body if you're always in your head, because you're disconnected from it anyway. So first we have to come fully into embodiment and investigate this body. What is it? Is it me? Is it mine? Is it a self? And when we look clearly, we see it's simply comprised of the four elements. The body's made up of the earth element. I just ate my breakfast. Very earthy, very grounded after eating breakfast. You can kind of, it's of all the elements, it's got the most substance. The body is, a skeleton, the way we perceive it anyway. So it's earth. It's made up of water. It's a very watery experience. 70% of it, actually. The breath is the air element. And the warmth or the coolness we feel is the fire element. So come back just to the elemental nature of this body and investigate it. And that will take you deeper into understanding the nature of this body, and the nature, eventually, the nature that's always present, even in the presence of a separate body, or the appearance of a separate body. So someone's saying the bells brought me back to the self. It's another way to embody yourself, just listening. So there are many, tools or techniques that we can use. You have to find what works best for you, and that will change too. Hi, Renee. You got a question. Is it normal to be getting absolutely nowhere on the spiritual path? Yes, because there's nowhere to get. I seem to be worse as a person than when I started out. Well, there's a lot of assumptions there, Renee. So whatever judgments popped up in your mind about this person who's now worse, I bet you tomorrow or next week you might think the person's better. Whenever we have a concept or a belief in a person or a personality, we're always going to be mired, stuck in samsara. So we have to uproot this great delusion that I am a person. We have personality traits and proclivities, of course, but is that who and what we are? Of course not. We get all sorts of conditioning handed down to us just in this life. We'll just stick with this life. Some good, some bad, some habits, healthy habits, unhealthy habits. There's a mood one day, another mood another day. But which is the person that doesn't change? That we can say, this is Renee. Renee is just a name that we've labelled, and it was given to you at birth. And then we attach this belief that there is a Renee, a fixed, unchanging essence of Renee, which is then this Renee name becomes, it's the body. This is Renee. And then the body acts in certain ways and we go, that's bad Renee and that's good Renee. And no, there's no Renee. You've got to see through all these labels and concepts and delusions. And, believe it or not, this Renee has the same Buddha nature as everybody and everything. Renee can at times experience this uncluttered awareness that simply knows this mind that's going, Renee, you're terrible, you're worse than when you started, you're getting nowhere. Who knows that? What knows that, rather? What is the essence of that which knows this commentary and this trip that you're putting yourself on? And because there's no person in the way we often think of it, there's an appearance of things. We're not going to deny the appearance of a separate body at this level, an experience of separate experiences. But we have to go a lot deeper than that, believing in that. And then when we let go of this delusion that there's some person there, then we realize there's no person to go anywhere or get anything. And in that realization, we have arrived. There's a letting go. There's a giving up. Not giving up in, it's hopeless, I may as well give up. It's letting go, giving up of thinking there's someone here to go somewhere to get something. And that is suchness. It's just now. So even if you're mired in the pits of despair, Renee, or the next week you might be as high as a kite, the awareness just knows it. So stay with recognizing the awareness, but don't start turning the awareness into a person or a self. Because if you do, it just becomes another thought. The question below you from Kim Ho: can we feel more than the body or bigger than? Feel a space or something else than the normal things? If we get aware enough, how does it feel to be liberated? Can we feel more than the body or bigger than the body? Yeah. So when the body, when one's mind becomes very quiet and still, people out there probably already had this experience from time to time. The sense of this separate body can start to disappear as a perception. And then we can just feel a spaciousness, an openness, a interconnectedness with everything, so that we are no longer confined to a sense of me and mine in this body, in these thoughts. And then the boundaries dissolve, yeah? So that happened. That is, in that moment, one is liberated from the delusion of a me and a my. But you can't force these things to happen. If you try to become spacious or transcend all boundaries, it's like, who's doing that? There's still that controller there trying to get a sense of going beyond. So that open spaciousness, dissolution, only happens when we genuinely let go, but not letting go with an ulterior motive. Letting go because letting go happens. That's all you can say. Letting go happens without anyone doing it. And in that moment, there is a feeling of liberation. So I'm thinking, Kim, you've probably already had a taste of that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking that question. But if you've had that experience where everything just kind of dissolves into spaciousness, whether it lasts for a minute or a day or a week, the problem is when we have those experiences of dissolution, we go back to it and go, oh, that's what it was like. I got to get that back. And I keep remembering what that felt like. It felt so free. And then that just keeps blocking our progress. So liberation is only in the moment too, you know, whether you're feeling spacious or whether you're feeling like Renee, hopeless. All that stuff, that suchness, if it's looked into with wisdom, mindfulness, compassion, we can be liberated in that moment, even from that space of despair. So we don't have to think we all have to be blissing out in spacious openness to be liberated. Everything is potential fodder for waking up, for being liberated. But we don't agree. We think, no, it has to be good, it has to be bliss. And that's nonsense. If you talk to a lot of people, or I don't know, read stuff or watch stuff, you see a lot of people come to awakening through deep suffering. So anything's possible. Okay, question below says, how to stop believing the voice in my head? Well, go listen to the voice in your head. Really listen to it and look and inquire. Who is this voice? What is this voice? When I believe in the voice, what does it give rise to? So if I believe the voice that says I'm a hopeless case, it's pretty obvious how you're going to feel and where that's going to lead to. If I believe the voice says I'm a wonderful person, fully enlightened, I love everybody, and I'm pure and spiritual, how's that going to feel? Yeah, high as a kite for a day or two. It's just this sort of bipolar, isn't it? Up and down, splits. So you've got to not believe any of those voices, the delusions of grandeur, or the ones that say that you're worthless. But even the spiritual voices that say you are not a self, you are the Brahman, that can maybe be a help if it's owned, but it's got to be picked up very skillfully, because it's still a voice, it's still a thought, and that thought can give rise to all greater delusions. So the voice in and of itself is nothing. It's just an empty resounding, as Longchenpa says. You really just have to come back to this naked awareness, this childlike awareness that doesn't have a view or an opinion and just knows. So we start believing by noticing first, investigating, and simply by knowing it, things start to be let go of. Okay, so the questions seem to be, interestingly enough, taking a bit of a theme today. There's a lot of crossover, even though the words appear to be different. So that's interesting. Can the ego be purified and integrated if it goes from fragmentation to fullness? Well, the ego doesn't really get purified or integrated. The ego is just seen as a ghost, as an illusion. We talk about the ego, but when you really investigate the ego, it's not really there. It's just this habitual tendencies give rise to a sense, a belief in an ego. Yeah, but in its simplest term, the ego is merely a thought of me and mine, of I am this, I am that. So we don't really purify it, but the awareness comes more to the fore, and it sees the pure awareness, which is pure in and of itself. I guess purifies delusions, and we let go of this belief in an ego. It's just like a shadow. Okay, so that answer was helpful for someone. So Ricky's asking about the concept of Atman in relation to no self. To me, it's one and the same. Yeah, well, the Buddha used he was around during, the times of all sorts of interesting philosophical debates and discussions amongst the Brahmins in ancient India. So I'm not sure how that notion that he really stressed anatta, which means no self, but I imagine perhaps that this concept of Atman had been taken on board by people who weren't enlightened to mean a solid sense of a fixed, unchanging soul. When you really listen to the masters talking about, like Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta or his guru Siddharam Eshwar, those who really realize, they talk about the Atman in a very different way, more like an appearance, but not as a fixed personal soul. So I think the Buddha came up and stressed more the not self nature of the conditioned and the unconditioned with this word anatta, to combat people's belief in Atman as a fixed permanent self. So, as far as concepts go, you could say Atman and anatta are polar opposites. But when you listen to the realized masters talk about Atman, they will also stress that Atman is not a self, it's not a soul. Okay? But anyway, I'm not an expert on Hindu philosophy, so I won't go on much more about that. But again, concepts, we're getting lost in concepts. When we have realization, these confusions around concepts dissolve, and we start to understand concepts, what concepts are pointing to. So we need to go there. Can spending time with totally unaware people impact your spiritual progress? Yes and no. Totally depends. But the good thing about spending time with totally unaware people, and who's saying that they're totally unaware, by the way? If we were fully aware, we wouldn't see people as totally unaware. We would actually see the perfection in people. Yeah, but we'd probably at the same time see that they weren't aware of their perfection. However, if we come back to this kind of sense that we have, that there's people aware and people who are unaware or ignorant, and maybe lesser degrees of ignorance, those unaware people can really help us so much. How? Because they'll show us our own judgments, our own arrogance and conceit, that we're much more spiritually progressive than them, and they're just ignoramuses. So we need to see that those people help us really see that judgment, that arrogance. And then, if we are really genuinely making progress, keeping our hearts open, then we can really be fully present with these unaware people from a non-judgmental, compassionate perspective. They may inquire about our spiritual practices, they may not. But it doesn't matter. We're not going in seeking to change them or judge them. And we can see how the difficulties that they perhaps put out there can really help us develop so many spiritual qualities like patience, kindness, gentleness, non-judgmentalism, and then discernment as well. So if there are a bunch of people who are just, really negative and unskillful and causing a lot of harm to themselves and others, then the discernment says that I need to move away from them. It's not helping me because I'm getting caught in it, or I'm just kind of in a field of grossness. So then discernment, but it's not we don't move away by condemning them. We move away knowing that we perhaps need more supportive conditions. So that's what Sangha's for, community of practitioners. Well, that's what a quiet place in nature is for. That's what the teachings are for. So, there's no black and white answer to this, but if you really can't get away from people who could be your family, who are totally unaware, you've got to work with it as skillfully as possible to wake up. So Kelly is asking, when listening to the sound of the bell and inner vibrations and imagery arise from the bell, is it okay to observe all sensations, or do we try to simply focus on the sound? Yeah, anything's okay. Just with that bell, you'd start to become aware of the vibrations and sensations within, because that's what sound does. It can use a lot of sound for sound healing, for example. So there's no right thing to do or wrong thing to do. You just notice, it gives rise to a sense of aliveness or peace. Just notice what those sensations are like, and then the sound will come. So your awareness is kind of flowing, isn't it, between these objects? But the awareness is just aware, and let it kind of flow where it wants to flow. If you try to do anything, you think, she said I've got to focus on the sound. Don't worry about that, and I shouldn't go. It's like, no, just let your awareness be open. It's just a large field, right, of different sensations, bodily sensations, or the sound that comes through the ear. They're just different sense doors. So you can alternate, but also just let the mind be restful, rest with whatever, and be free. Don't try to pin it down. I have to stay on the sound. I have to stay on the sensation. Yeah, no pinning the mind down or forcing it. Okay, so Never Cry Wolf says, I read something fascinating in a Tibetan book about how we actually are born and die every fraction of a second. Yeah, but we do not notice this because it happens so quickly. Any comment? No, other than to say that's true. But you can start to notice it in meditation. And what do we mean by we're born and die every fraction of a second? Well, even science can help you understand this from an intellectual perspective to begin with, that these cells of the body are constantly dying and being reborn. Of course, we're not aware of that unless we have very deep meditation. But, what this body was comprised of last night is very different from what it's comprised of this morning. All right, all those cells and I don't know, all the other microscopic things that are going on, the bacteria and I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but, so I don't have all the words. What other things are there apart from cells and blood and, all that stuff. The blood keeps changing and being replenished, doesn't it? The food that we eat's changing everything in our body, So we're not the same any minute. We're constantly changing. So we can start to notice that at a very, at the beginning, just a very kind of gross level. When we close our eyes, we notice just the thoughts. They keep changing and dying. There's no thought that stays the same. It keeps arising and ceasing. Then we go into our body and we notice the different sensations, the pain, the pressure, the warmth, the heat, the cold. It keeps changing. And then if we keep going deeper and deeper into the subtle awareness, we can see it at a cellular level and how the cells are constantly arising and ceasing, dying and being reborn. Yeah. So when we talk about rebirth, it's happening every moment. A different experience is happening every moment. Not to mention, this idea that we have about a stream of consciousness that attaches from life to life. So Ricky is giving Renee some encouragement. Yeah, and I would agree that, often when we're at our lowest point is when we make breakthroughs too. So, but if we give up, then there's no progress. But if we hang in there and recognize that sometimes at our lowest ebb, our lowest point, is when we, things start to really unfold. All right, just a few more questions, I think, and then we'll bring this session to a close. So Villain has asked, I appreciate what you do. Is there a particular practice you feel to be generally useful? Something maybe that you find yourself going to daily or often? Thank you. Well, sorry to be a party pooper, but what I find useful is not necessarily going to be useful for anyone else. So I'm reluctant to say too much because I've been through such different approaches to practice, you could say, even though I always come back. Okay, I'll tell you what I always come back to. I always just come back to being in the body, here and now. That's it. And what I then choose to pay attention to or investigate has changed over time, has deepened over time. But if you're not in your body here and now, being present and paying attention to that, and the body includes the breath, then you're just going to be on a trip or looking for a way to escape from this body. So the body really keeps us grounded here and now, and it can be a very peaceful place to be when we just come back to full embodiment. And then from there we investigate the nature of this body, the nature of this mind, the nature of awareness itself. Yeah. And see what happens. The other thing that I do regularly that I find useful is listen to Dharma. And this is why this channel has been created. I didn't create it for everyone out there. I mean, I'm glad that everybody out there, so many people out there have tuned in and picked it up and found it useful too. But I did it for myself. It was purely selfish. I created these readings for myself so I could listen to Dharma. Because when I listen to Dharma, the mind stops and then the masters speak to you in the depths of the heart. So I created these listening tools for myself and then just had the spontaneous idea to share it on my very dodgy YouTube channel. When I say dodgy, there was nothing there. I think there was an old meditation put up on another channel. But anyway, so I created a very rudimentary YouTube channel, 5-6 years ago, and popped up a very rudimentary recording, only spontaneously thinking, I found it helpful. Maybe someone will find it helpful. Thinking that there's one little obscure person out there who's practicing on the path and somehow comes upon it. Well, I didn't think that so many people would eventually find it and appreciate it. So it's obviously a practice that other people find helpful, just listening to the Dharma, but not as a way of then writing a book about it or critiquing it or selling it on the marketplace, but only as a way of waking up and helping us understand who and what we are. I've started to understand that I need to be here and now. Yeah, there's nowhere else that you can be, ultimately. How do I integrate that with having to plan our future, work, make money, raise kids, etc.? When you're fully here and now, the answers to all those questions will come from a much wiser and much deeper place. Yeah? But if you're not here and now, if you're always worrying about the future and projecting into the future from a space that's very heady and very agitated, just gives rise to more of the same. So when you're here and now and you have to make plans, you know that those plans may not come to fruition, right, all the time. Might be better, might be worse, may not work out. But ultimately, if you're here and now, you just deal with whatever arises and you make your decisions come from that place. It's a very different place. I think you should all know this. It's a very different place, space, and energy when we respond from a fully embodied presence to when we're responding, which is not responding, reacting from a space or energy of fear and agitation. And therefore, the outcomes are often very, very different. So if you can just settle down, be fully embodied, fully present, then the answer will come. The direction will come. You see the birds in the camera? Sweet, huh? I can see them. I'm pointing to them with my mouse, but you probably can't see my mouth. They're the white corellas. They screech. Okay. So some quotes and stuff here. I'm just going to scroll through. Maybe just take one more question. I don't know if Ched Tao visuals is a question or a statement, but I'll read it out. I'm in the dark night of the soul and I'm learning to not be attached to any state. Good. Because no matter what I do, the suffering and pain is not disappearing. Radical and full acceptance is needed. Yeah, but also noticing, is this suffering and pain not disappearing even for a millisecond? Because I guarantee you, suffering and pain is not, it might appear to be, but is it? It gets you to investigate that. Are you always suffering and in pain without any gap between, without any respite or noticing? Yeah, that's what you need to start noticing. It's not a solid, fixed state of suffering and pain. It's arising and ceasing. So start to notice, even if it doesn't last for very long, it does come to cessation. There might be a moment of breathing out. Notice that. So you go on and say, but the person who is realizing this cannot do anything. So there's just nothing to do. I'm so confused. Yeah, so notice that confusion is part of it. This wanting to push away. I want to get rid of this pain. That's what you've got to start to notice. It's the pushing away and the not accepting that actually enables things to stick around. But when you take a very different stance of, this is, it's a bit like Jesus on the cross, complete surrender and acceptance. Now, when you really do that, again, not as another method to try and get something, but when you really fully just go, I'm just going to allow it all, see what happens. Because at the moment you're saying, it seems you're saying, actually, it seems that you're doing a lot, no matter what I do. So what are you doing? You're trying to get rid of something. You're trying to change something. Even, trying to use perhaps skillful means that might appear skillful means, but it's actually just compounding or continuing this sense of suffering and pain. So when you really just say, I'm going to just allow whatever's happening to happen, and there's always an and here. So I'm just not just throwing you to the wolves and saying, just suffer, but opening to the suffering, but starting to notice that which knows the suffering. They're two very different things. There's suffering and there's mental blah, 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 but there's something that knows it. If there wasn't something that knows it, you couldn't even have written those two paragraphs. So that's what we all have to come back to knowing, is that which knows. Because that which knows is not the suffering. Right? Now, as I said in the meditation, I encourage you to go back to listen to it if you didn't already. That might only last for a very brief moment, a very brief glimpse of the light, but it's there. So you just have to keep practicing. And sometimes that intense suffering actually brings with it a lot of grace and a lot of blessings, because it is forcing us to let go and to wake up. We can't be distracted when there's a lot of suffering and pain. We're really with it, but there's ways to be with it that will help us not necessarily get rid of it, particularly if it's in the body. You might not be able to, you can't control the bodily pain. I mean, maybe drugs can work for a little while, or the mental pain. But it's learning that when we start to become the witness to these things, then that mental suffering and reactivity starts to dissipate, and we stand apart, independent from it. So you've got to keep working at it. But the confusion is part of the pain too, yeah? So look at the confusion. I mean, all the resources on my channel, I guarantee you, whatever one you kind of just spontaneously hit upon will speak to this in some way. So that's what this Wisdom of the Masters channel is for, to help you learn from your own inner guru. I sometimes feel that my hands or arms don't belong to me. Well, they don't. Is this sense of disembodiment normal? Should I lean into this and focus my awareness here? Yeah, I mean, but don't make too much of it. If you start, there's a sense of, as I'm talking, I don't know, who's this voice? I don't know, some voice coming out. It's not me or mine. Sometimes I can feel like it's an alien. It's alien to me, because I'm not alien in the sense of it freaking me out, but it's just an appearance, and it's not very I don't take it personally, right? But if we overthink it and start to react to it, we can become slightly disassociated or something. So just notice, how does it feel just to look at your hands and look at your arms, and it's kind of amazing. Where did this hand come from? It's quite freaky, isn't it? Wow. Don't think about it, just look. And notice that which is looking. Yeah. So you can lean into it in that sense of resting the awareness, but don't make it a conceptual, too much conceptual. There might be a little bit of analysis through inquiry, but don't overanalyze things. Okay. Why does it feel that whatever I do tends to fail, including Buddhism? I don't know. You have to find that out for yourself. You've got some sort of patterning that starts to have some sort of measurement. I mean, you can't fail Buddhism. How can you fail Buddhism? One, there's no course. There's no prerequisites. All you're failing to do, if we want to talk about failing, is failing to recognize yourself. So Buddha means awake, awakened awareness. Now, the thing is, you can't fail that because your very nature is awakened awareness. You're simply failing to recognize it. That's all. But life isn't it's not a university course or a school curriculum. It can feel that way sometimes. When you fail, it'd be good if you really fail consciously by looking into this sense of yourself as a failure and where that comes from. But you can't fail. You just keep telling yourself this story and believing it, that's all. Let it go. Someone's asking for a reading, but I'm not sure what it is. Affirming faith on your chart. I haven't heard of it. Okay, maybe last question from Jennifer, I think. Am I correct to see that the utility of meditation is to spend time in a place of clarity and recognize how to deal with life's challenges that cause chaos? Wording this itself can be a distraction. Well, in response to your question, am I correct to see that the utility of meditation is just yes and no? What about those times when you're not in a place of clarity? And most of the time we're not in a place of clarity. So then has to be seen in meditation. There's clarity or there's no clarity, and recognizing that. So when you recognize whatever's arising and appearing in terms of appearances are of the same nature, the nature to change, the nature to be not of a self, a permanent self. That gives you all the tools you need to recognize and deal with whatever life throws you. The good and the bad, they're all the same. The problem is we like some things and don't like others. We want life to always be sunny, and it's not. Look, it's cloudy today. We might get more rain. Boo-hoo. If I don't like that, I'm going to suffer. Right? And then when it's sunny tomorrow, which I think it's forecast to be, if I go, yay, we've finally arrived, guess what? It's not always going to stay sunny. So it's coming to a place of whatever's there, whether it be a place of clarity or non-clarity, and from that suchness itself as being whatever presents, then we really go into allowing the full meaning of suchness. It's like this. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there. And just apologize if I didn't get to your question, and encourage you all to keep practicing, keep understanding, and particularly to start moving away from trying to figure life out through your head and all the problems of the world through your head. When you come to see truth in your heart, then you'll come to understand how to approach and respond and deal with the suffering, firstly in your own heart, because it's got to start there. If you don't know how to deal with the pain and confusion that's coming up in your own heart, you can't help others, and you can't really respond to the world with any degree of wisdom. So we've got to start there. And then, whatever we see, hear, perceive in the world, we'll start to understand it more and respond from a place of compassion and understanding. So on that note, I wish you all well and all blessings. In 3 weeks' time, excuse me. In 3 weeks' time, I urge you to be back offering a session. So keep abreast of the posts, or go onto our website and you'll see dates, etc. So take care, everybody, and just come back to this simplicity of being. And, yeah, that's all. Take care, and I'm going to end the stream now.